Great. Hi, Thomas. I'm Robin Schneider from the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, and I am excited to be here today with Thomas from TMR Business Consulting. It's nice to see you, Thomas. How you been?
I'm good. How are you doing, Robin?
I'm great. So, Thomas is our expert in Ohio, and our members have been asking me a lot of questions about additional licenses that are going to be coming available down there. So I really appreciate you, agreeing to spend some time with us today to talk a little bit about what those licenses are and if there might be opportunities there for our members to get involved in another state or do some expanding. For our viewers, I love to point out that I worked with Thomas when he was with Battleground Strategies. Thomas's firm worked on our ballot initiative here in Michigan. And so Thomas was a wonderful asset to our team. Somebody I could call anytime when I needed help with anything during the campaign. And so Thomas was a large part of helping to legalize cannabis here in Michigan. In fact, on election night, we were just across the street over at the Radisson, and we had something called the War Room, where Thomas and Brandon, our campaign manager, were watching the numbers come in. And I had a room full of donors in the ballroom next door. And I kept coming in and saying, what are the numbers? And I was like leaning over Thomas's shoulder. I was terrified we were going to lose because that was a large investment that I was responsible for fundraising for. And well, $3.5 million on the line. And either my reputation was going to be ruined or we were going to win. And so as I'm panicking, standing behind Thomas, they actually kicked me out of the war room and told me to go entertain the guests. And then we won. So here we are, 2 years later-ish, 2.5 years later. And Thomas is doing lobbying and consulting down in Ohio. And so let's talk a little bit more about your background, Thomas.
Yeah, appreciate the introduction, Robin. I remember that campaign well. It was fun for me. You had the stressful job, but I got to do all the fun things. So you're glad to be here with you again today. But since that campaign, I've been heavily involved here in Ohio. I actually did a couple of years with the trade association down here in Ohio for the industry, the Ohio Medical Cannabis Industry Association, and served as sort of the lead voice for the industry here in Ohio, representing the industry in the media, but also representing the industry over the state house and with the regulators. I left the association about a month or so before COVID hit, not knowing that was coming, of course, to do a little bit of consulting work instead of serving with the association. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And so wanted to spend some time with you here today and talk about Ohio's program because we do have a new round of dispensary licenses opening up here, which is really exciting. It's the first time since the program launched that there's been an opportunity to get involved. And so it'll be a really fun, probably 3 or 4 month sprint from here to get those out.
Okay, so let's start with talking about how Ohio's market is structured. I know it's a little bit different than Michigan, so let's chat about that.
Yeah, so we are actually a limited license state here in Ohio. So every license except for testing licenses is capped. Right now, there's about 58 licenses, dispensary licenses in the state of Ohio. After this next round, they're going to issue an additional 73, so more than doubling the number of dispensaries here. But we also cap the number of processor and cultivation licenses in Ohio. And so we have about 20 large scale growers here in Ohio, and then about 14 smaller craft cultivators here in Ohio, and then 40 processors. Some of them are vertically integrated with the cultivators. Some of them are independent processors. And we only have about 3 testing labs right now. There's a few more that are potentially being built, but testing is a bit of a bottleneck here in Ohio, as it is in a lot of states. So we're a smaller program right now, having only launched about 2 years ago, but the numbers have really picked up since the dispensaries got built. So Ohio was a really slow program to roll out. When sales started, we only had 4 dispensaries in the entire state. And they were at kind of far-flung corners of the state. So, a patient in Cincinnati had a 4-hour drive to the nearest dispensary, which is just, you can't, most patients don't have the time to do that. An 8-hour round trip plus whatever time you spend in the dispensaries. So now that we have a lot more of the dispensaries built, access has gotten a lot better. We've seen the numbers pick up substantially, and we actually have about 170,000 patients purchasing, with about 10,000 new patients coming online every month.
Wonderful. 10,000 a month, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we're growing fast now. And so sales have actually in the past 2 years total about 350 million or so. So it's a good program to be in at this point. The sales are there, the patients are there, the product's there. It's established itself, and it's a good opportunity to get in without those initial months of losing money while you wait for the patient count to tick up.
Now, what kind of products are legal in Ohio?
Yeah, so pretty much everything is legal in Ohio. The big restriction is that patients technically are not allowed to smoke. You're still allowed to sell the flower, but technically patients are supposed to put it in a vaporizer that does not combust it, just heats it up. Realistically, we all know that patients are doing what they want. They're putting it in a joint themselves. They're using a bong, doing whatever it is they want to do. But you
what
can't
about a
sell
hookah?
if the patient wants to. Legally, they're not allowed to, but
oh, that's what I'm
legally,
wondering. So a hookah is a no-go.
No, so you will not be able to sell a hookah in the dispensary. You will not be able to sell papers in the dispensary. You can't sell pre-rolls, but you can sell the flower itself. You
What
can
about
sell any
hash?
processed products. I'm sorry, what was that?
Hash. What about a hash?
Yeah, there's some hash.
Nice.
Being sold.
Okay.
So, other than pre-rolls, your dispensary can sell pretty much any product it wants. As far as accessories go, though you are pretty much limited to those vaporizers that do not combust.
Okay, well, is this a good time to get into the Ohio market? I know my members are wondering that question.
I think it is.
Okay.
I touched on it a little bit before. We have a good patient count now. We have good sales happening. So you're getting in now means you're going to have a solid customer base from the start. You're not going to have to wait for that customer base to build up before you get profitable. But what really makes Ohio exciting is we are on the cusp of adult use here. So back in 2020, just before COVID hit, we had a ballot initiative that was starting to pick up steam, had the backing of a few businesses here in Ohio. COVID hit, obviously it did not finish the process, but that chatter's continued ever since. And I would expect that within the next couple of years, we see a ballot initiative to push rec here in Ohio. If not in 2022, certainly by 2024, we'll see that. So, rec's right around the corner, turns a limited license state into a very, very large market. And this is probably honestly your last opportunity to get into the state before we go rec. So exciting times. We'll probably look more like Illinois does today by the end of 2024.
Okay. So tell us about the new dispensary licenses that are about to be available in Ohio.
Yeah, so we are more than doubling the number of dispensaries here in Ohio. So
how many are there now?
Right now, there are 58 dispensaries that are licensed. They're spread throughout the state of Ohio. So Ohio does things a little uniquely. So we actually break the state up into districts, and you apply for a dispensary license within that district, so that we have some geographic dispersion of licenses. And so they're awarding 73 new licenses to bring us to a total of 130 at the end of this round. So not that many dispensaries for a state of 12 million people, but a pretty good opportunity when you got 73 in one round. Those districts are going to remain the same in this round. And we actually already have, I can do a screen share here, show you where they're coming. 1 second here. All right, can you see that?
Yes. Well,
Nope.
yes, I see it now.
That is actually not the right screen share. 1 second here. So the way they've done this is they have distributed the new licenses based on where patients are right now.
Okay,
So that map come up this time.
great. Perfect.
So you can see kind of the districts. So each color is a different district. There's 31 of them total. And on the left there is how many dispensaries are in that district right now. And on the right is how many dispensaries are going to be there at the end of this second round. So you can see like down around Cincinnati, there's a lot of new dispensaries that are going to go in there. Hamilton County itself is getting 8 more, and then the surrounding counties are each getting a substantial amount more. Other parts of Ohio up around Toledo are not getting that many more. And frankly, that's honestly because a lot of patients probably just drive up to Michigan. You guys have quite a few dispensaries right there on the border serving those patients right now. So there's a lot of opportunities throughout the state. You get to kind of pick where you want to be in the state, compete within those locations, and go from there. And so you can pick those population centers, you can pick those counties right around there that are not going to be quite as competitive, but still give you access to those population centers. Or you could pick a district that is bordering another state that doesn't have a license, knowing that the medical program is not going to be that profitable for you. But when rec hits, you're going to be the closest dispensary to another state that doesn't have anything there to serve folks, and wait for that to happen. So a lot of options and a lot of new dispensaries coming to Ohio.
That's exciting. How do the existing dispensary owners feel about this?
That depends on who you are. So another interesting rule we have in Ohio is you're only allowed to own up to 5 dispensaries in the state.
Okay.
And so for those dispensary owners who already have 5 licenses, they're pretty peeved about it because their market share is going to be diluted. For those dispensary owners who only have 1 or 2, they're pretty excited. They have the opportunity to expand. And of course, patients are excited. Means more competition for them, lower prices, more access, and the cultivators and processors, of course, also want to see more outlets for their products. So there's a couple of dispensary owners that are peeved, but the vast majority of everybody's pretty excited for this.
So was this a departmental change, or was this a statute?
Yeah, so this is actually the Board of Pharmacy oversees dispensaries here in Ohio. And by law, they have to review the number of dispensaries every 2 years. And they consider a variety of factors, the patient count, prices, all those sorts of things, total population of Ohio, to determine whether or not there are enough dispensaries in the state. And so that review actually just occurred this past year, and they decided that they needed more dispensaries to serve the patient population. We grew much faster than the state projections expected us to, which is kind of funny because if you talk to anybody in the industry, we're growing exactly at the rate the industry said we would grow. That review finished. They determined they needed new dispensaries. That's what this RFA is going to be about this year. That'll happen again in about 2 years. But then, we'll be having these serious conversations about rec if it has a test.
So what is different from this round of licensing and the last round of licensing? And then what are the requirements to apply for a license?
Yeah, so there's really only one significant change from this round compared to the last. The last round of applications was a purely score-based, merit-based process. So the highest scores in each district got the licenses. This round, they're actually going to institute a lottery for it. And so what happened is, with the merit-based process, it's subjective scoring, and at the end of it, they got sued by a whole bunch of people who didn't win licenses, had to spend a whole bunch of money on lawsuits. So they want to avoid that this time around, and so they've instituted a lottery where there's still a competitive application process to an extent. You do have to meet your minimum scores in each of the categories to qualify for the lottery, but once you're in the lottery, it's a traditional lottery where everybody gets their ticket in the lottery, one gets drawn, that's who wins that license. And so the the really good part about that is it allows a lot more business models for dispensaries. So when you are looking at a state like Michigan, your dispensaries run the gamut. You have these very high-end, fancy lifestyle type brand dispensaries that are expensive, but have all the bells and whistles. And then you have very basic dispensaries that are really just there trying to minimize costs, minimize the price for consumers, and are very, very basic. And then you have everything in between. In a merit-based state like Ohio, everything is fancy and expensive because it has to be to win the license. So those other business models never really had an opportunity to even get in the game in Ohio. And this lottery process is going to allow some of those other style dispensaries, you could say, to get in the game and have a chance here in Ohio. And so that's really the big difference. But we're expecting that all the application pieces are going to be substantially similar. So you're still going to need your business plan. You're still going to need your funding plan. You're still going to need your SOPs. You're still going to need to have your location predetermined, your operations plan, your patient care plan. All of that content is still pretty much going to be the same. It's just the lottery versus merit-based process that's changing.
Great. I don't know if you can reduce your screen share. There you go. All right, there, that's better. Okay, so a little bit of an easier threshold as long as you can find property, right? But
Yeah.
contingent on a lottery, so it's the luck of the draw.
Yep. So it is, there's a bit of luck involved in it, but there are things you can do to kind of increase your odds. So the first being, don't apply in the population centers, right? If you look back at the last application round, if you're in Hamilton County, which is where Cincinnati is, Franklin County, which is Columbus, or Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland, those 3 population centers, those counties each saw like 70 plus applicants with 50 plus viable applications. So you apply in one of those, you're gonna have like a 1 in 50 chance of actually winning. If you go out to those counties surrounding them, so like Delaware County, Licking County, some of the surrounding counties where you still have access to those population centers, the number of applications those counties get drops substantially. So you're going to increase your odds substantially just by focusing on the areas around the population centers instead of trying to be directly in the population centers. The other thing you can do is there's no limit to the number of applications you can submit. So if you really want to be in Ohio and you want to submit 10, 15 applications, you're free to do that. It does get a little bit more expensive. There's a fee for every application you submit, but it's really going to increase your odds of winning at least 1 or 2 dispensaries if you submit multiple.
We definitely saw this in multiple municipalities here in Michigan where they had lottery people submitting 10 and 20 applications. So that's something that I think the people who didn't think to do that felt it was unfair, but it's good to know, and thank you for the consult on the front end that is a possibility. If you want to, do more than 1 application, that, it's going to increase your chances. And that's what we've seen here. Now we're a local opt-in, state. So each municipality gets to decide whether they're going to allow them. So is there any component of local control in Ohio, or is it all state control?
So the nice part of Ohio is we are an opt-out state. So every municipality is automatically opted into the program unless they choose not to be. So you have a whole lot more options in Ohio. Now, with that being said, it's still important that you do your homework and work with those local municipalities ahead of time. You want to make sure that they're okay with you being there, because if they, you submit your application and that's the first, the news article that comes out about a dispensary possibly being located in that town is the first the mayor hears of it, they can go back and they can ban dispensaries while you're waiting your license, and you end up either not getting that license or having a very expensive legal battle. That actually happened in the first round. We had a dispensary in Huron, Ohio, who they had done their homework. The town had agreed to host them, and they ended up winning a license. But during that process, the town decided they didn't like the particular location they were going to be in and asked them to move. And so that dispensary had about a 2-year legal battle where the Board of Pharmacy wouldn't let them move. The town wouldn't let them in at their original location. So they had about 2 years of lost sales, brand recognition, and a very expensive legal battle to be able to finally build that dispensary.
Wow. It's too bad and expensive.
So doing your homework ahead of time
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really important.
So you mentioned that you need a location secured before you apply.
Yep.
What can you tell me about zoning and where you need to locate?
Yeah, so most municipalities, you really just need typical retail zoning to be able to operate a dispensary. But there are some rules at the state level on where you can put a dispensary. So you do have to be 500 feet from, parks, churches, schools, your drug rehab centers, all those sorts of things, which can make it really difficult, especially when you're in a population center. Trying to find, you don't realize how many churches and daycares there are until you're trying to be 500 feet from one. And so there are a few restrictions there, but for the most part, it's normal retail zoning that you're gonna have to deal with. The tricky part about it is that you were expecting the RFA to drop, if not in July, at least by August. And once it drops, you're only gonna have 2 months to do everything. So you want to be in Ohio looking for those properties sooner rather than later, because a lot of the pieces of the application depend on your property and securing it. And you're just not going to be able to do them until you have that property figured out.
Okay, so is there a social equity component to these licenses?
So unfortunately, there's not a social equity component anymore in Ohio. So when we originally passed our medical law, there was a set aside for minority applicants, where 15% of the licenses had to go to economically disadvantaged groups. That helped in the first round. There are quite a few licenses that were awarded to minority groups that would not have been awarded to minority groups without that set aside. But it caused a few folks to lose out on licenses that otherwise would have gotten them, and they sued, and the courts ultimately tossed that set aside out as unconstitutional. The law has never been changed, so we unfortunately no longer have a very strong social equity component. Last round, there was a diversity section of the application where you could talk about like your hiring plans and your contractor plans, and you got some points for having hiring plans and contractors that had diverse backgrounds. Remains to be seen if that's going to be part of this new application. I think it probably will. So there's an element of social equity with that, but it's a pretty weak social equity component compared to most states.
Okay. Cool. So you mentioned that the Supreme Court, was it the Supreme Court that ruled that it was unconstitutional? Is that because Ohio is not an affirmative action state, or what was the reason behind that?
So their reasoning was just that the lawmakers hadn't shown that this, because it was a brand new industry, hadn't shown that any particular group, racial group, gender, economic group, any of those sorts of groups had been disadvantaged in the industry. And so, obviously the war on drugs has had a hugely disproportionate impact on communities of color. But because the industry was new, it wasn't the industry itself, and that's how it kind of got thrown out.
Okay, well, Ohio is certainly different than Michigan, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so when is you mentioned when it's time to drop the applications, when do you expect that the license applications will drop?
Yeah, so the official word from the state is just sometime this summer. They've been pretty vague with it, and the reason is that the rule change to allow them to use the lottery system is still going through the process to become official rule. And so it really depends on when that process finishes up. I personally, based on having worked with the state and worked with the industry, expect that it will probably happen sometime in July. But it could be a little bit longer than that. So we'll have to wait and see for a definitive answer on that. But I'd advise folks to plan on a July timeline.
Right. So when should a potential applicant begin preparing?
So that is, right now, the real estate piece that we talked about before is
Mhm.
really the driving factor of that.
Okay.
Um, Having to be 500 feet from all those different types of properties can make it pretty difficult to find a suitable location for a dispensary.
The real
Um,
estate game is now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's folks in Ohio already looking at
Yeah,
real
yeah.
estate. And the
Okay.
longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to find those properties because folks are going to be scooping up what is available. Um, and then a lot of other parts of the application depend on your property. So even your security plan is going to have some changes to it based on what your layout and your surroundings look like. So the sooner you can identify a suitable property and arrange for that, the better off you're going to be. If you're waiting until the application drops and that 2 month clock starts ticking, you may spend the first half of it just looking for a property, and then you're going to be rushed to finish those other parts of the application, and your application is going to suffer as a result.
So other than securing your property, what else can a potential applicant do now to start preparing?
Yeah, so we actually know most of the rules you're going to have to comply by, and a lot of the information you're going to have to provide. So, and if you're looking at coming to Ohio seriously, I would recommend you get out there, start looking for properties now, but you also kind of get the basics in order. So start working on your financing plan, where you're going to get the money. Start hiring your application writers, your lawyers, your consultants, anyone you think you're going to need to submit a competitive application. Get all that kind of figured out now, so that once the application drops, you can really focus in on writing your SOPs and some of the unique aspects, like having to submit your floor plans and stuff like that, rather than still trying to get the basics in order.
And that's something you can help people with, right?
Absolutely. So I do not do application writing personally, but I do a lot of lobbying. I can help you with navigating the board of pharmacy, help you navigating the local municipalities, who's willing to have you, who's not willing to have you, help you out, having some community events to make sure that the community, the wider community, other than just the political leaders, are going to be willing to have you, so that you don't have any surprises later on. And then also do a lot of the PR work here in Ohio, having been the sort of face of the industry. So, one of the unique aspects of Ohio is the application is supposed to be blind. So obviously, there's folks at the board of pharmacy who are going to be able to connect the applicant name to the actual application, but most of the people grading it are not going to have any idea who it is. And so you have to be really careful when you're out in the media beforehand. They all want the inside scoop, who's coming to these municipalities. But you have to be really careful about what you say, so that you don't give away information that's going to make your application identifiable. So helping to navigate that process, to make friends with the media and give them what they need without telling them too much and risking your application.
What other services does your firm provide?
So those are the big ones for us. We'll help well with strategy for your application writers if they need it. You haven't been the lead lobbyist for the industry for the past couple of years. I know the program better than pretty much anyone in the state, and can definitely help them navigate writing those SOPs and doing that. But I don't do application writing myself. If you do need an application writer, I know quite a few good ones and can help connect you to them. But yeah, lobbying, PR, local municipalities, helping find properties, and then just strategy are my big things.
So I know you're really involved in the industry down there. Out of all of the licensees, who's your favorite?
Can't put me on that spot.
I know, I'm teasing you. I can't answer that one either, but I thought it'd be funny to ask you. So
There's definitely some that are better than others, but
yeah.
I can't say names.
People ask me that all the time, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's a dangerous question. I love them all." No, I mean it's interesting because the business in Ohio is certainly a little different than business in Michigan. When I was approached by Marijuana Policy Project to do the campaign to legalize adult use sales here in Michigan, my first reaction was, what are you talking about? We just legalized medical marijuana, businesses, and let's do this in a couple of years. We got some work to do. And they were like, well, if Michigan doesn't want to go, I guess we can do Ohio next. And I was like, no way are we going to let that happen. So it became, kind of a competition to get us legal before Ohio. And, I'm sorry about that, but I'm a little partial to Michigan, right? But I do know,
too.
I do look at, the potential in Ohio. And that legalization is a foregone conclusion. It's just a matter of when and getting all of the stakeholders to agree on, what the language is going to say, and getting them, and the activist community. But I do know, that Ohio will be soon. And so it seems to me like it would be a good idea to grab a retail license down there before adult use, if at all possible. So I really appreciate you, sharing some insight with us. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Honestly, I think we covered the big points, but I would just reiterate, this is probably your last opportunity to get to Ohio before rec comes. So if you want to be there when that starts, now is the time. And also just reiterate that the property search is hard here, but it's the first step to anything. So if you really want to be here, get started sooner rather than later. Don't wait for that app to drop.
And do you have, people, if people were to contact you, you can help them navigate that process with other consultants? And
yeah, absolutely. So I've got a large network here in Ohio. Whatever you need, lawyers, application writers, whoever it is you need. I probably know someone that can help you. And
real estate people,
yeah,
real estate people,
whatever you need.
Are you the one-stop shop of Ohio?
I would like to think I am.
Yeah.
Nobody knows Ohio like I do, so.
Good place to be. Okay, so how can people who are interested in Ohio and want to explore the market and the possibility of getting a license get a hold of you?
So we'll throw my contact information up here with a screen share real quick. Feel free to email me. There's a contact sheet on the website if you want to go there. Or that's my number if you just want to give me a call and talk through Ohio. We'll leave that up there for a couple minutes so folks can grab it. But yeah, happy to talk to anybody that has an interest in the state and help them in any way I can.
All right. Well, if that's all, then we will wrap things up. But I do want to just let everybody know that I have had a wonderful experience working with Thomas Rosenberger, and have a lot of confidence in your skill set and ability to deliver. You're definitely a top tier consultant. I've worked with you myself, and you've never dropped the ball on anything for me. So I really appreciate the time, Thomas. And anyone who's interested in Ohio, Thomas is your go-to guide for sure. And of course, anybody can reach out to me if you don't know how to contact Thomas, and I'll help you get to him. And with that, we will wrap up.
Yeah, appreciate all the kind words, Robin. And it was great chatting with you.
All right, take care, Thomas.